of September, Gideon is over. And the church said? Amen. Unbelievable. Not one tear shed. And Gideon is in heaven crying. Unbelievable. Wow. Hooray, we're done with Gideon. I'm not even going to ask when we get done with Revelation. Oh, me. Y'all are a tough crowd today. Very good. Gideon had captured 2 kings. What were their names? Zebah and Zalmunna. Zebah and Zalmunna. How had he, after he captured these kings, how had he used them? What did he do with them? He did what now? Yes, he took them back to 2 cities in Israel. One city by the name of Succoth and the other city by the name of Penuel. Why did he do that? Ah, yes, to show them that they were now under his control, weren't they? He had captured them, he had won the battle against them, and why was that such a big deal? Okay. Now remember, he had gone to those 2 cities requesting help, had he not? And they refused help because those kings were still alive. Those kings were still out there. They weren't under his control. And so they said, no help. You just go on hungry. We don't care if you're hungry or not. You haven't captured these 2 kings. There's no way we're helping you. So when he left, he told them, when I capture these 2 kings, when I win the victory, I'll be back. Right? I'll be back. And he was back. Showed them the 2 kings, followed through with his discipline on those 2 cities, did he not? Which city did he tear the tower down in? Okay, yes, the Penuel, he tore the tower down. Okay, that may have been either the tower that was, kind of a watchtower on the side of the city, or some believe it may have even been the palace that was located inside the city. Okay, a big government building that would have been there, a very prominent building. What did he do to the residents of Succoth? Oh yes, in some way he disciplined them with those big briars, did he not? Briars of the field, and was going to tear their flesh with those briars. So physical discipline was meted out upon them. So now he's done that, and now he still has 2 kings, doesn't he? He still has 2 kings. And guess what Gideon wants to do? He wants to go home, doesn't he? Now, I don't know about you, I don't want to take 2 kings home with me. Do you? My wife might not like that, especially if they're Midianite kings, you know. So the question is, what do I do with these kings, right? What do I do with them? And were there options that might have been open to Gideon relative to these kings? No? Yeah? Oh no? What kind of options? Okay, number one, he could have just held them captive, could he not? There were places they could have sent those kings, prisons, and other places in Israel where those kings could have been placed if he had wanted to. Okay, so that's one option. What else could he have done? Okay, he could execute them, couldn't he? He could put them to death. Anything else he could have done? Yeah, he could have traded them in some manner, as far as, we do a lot of trading of captives today, do we not? War criminals and stuff, and we trade out. He might have sold them into slavery to another nation. So there were a lot of options available unto Gideon, and he's only going to choose one. And what option is that? He's going to put them to death. But folks, what's interesting is the why he makes that option. Okay? That's what's interesting about the text. Why did he put them to death? Okay, and that's what we'll learn in this particular section. So it begins first with a review of Zeba and Zalmunna. Okay, it's almost as if he brings them in before him and he kind of starts questioning them, doesn't he? You know, he puts them in a little court there and he asks them a question. The slaughter at Tabor question. He said unto Zeba and Zalmunna, what manner of men were they whom you slew at Tabor? Wow, Mount Tabor. Here's the problem. We don't know when this battle at Tabor occurred. Okay? True or false? It could have happened during the time when Gideon attacked the Midianites and they fled. Could it have happened during that time frame? It might have. Okay? It might have occurred then. But had the Midianites been pretty evil to the children of Israel prior to this? Oh yes, folks. On a regular basis, Midian would enter into Palestine and do some awful things and filthy things to the Israelites to let them know that you're in bondage to us, right? And to prevent any uproars, to prevent any rebellions whatsoever, they would go in and do some pretty horrible things. So it may have been an instance that happened in the past, okay? But there was something that happened that he questions. What kind of men were those guys that you slew at Tabor? Now notice a quote there, okay? Look at Kyle and DeLitch. Kyle and DeLitch do not believe that these men were killed in the heat of battle. They write, and apparently not in open fight, but they had murdered them in an unrighteous and cruel manner. Now, if that be the case, it would make me think that it was not during the heat of battle. Okay? These two kings, Zeba and Zalmunna, they wouldn't have had time, would they? During the heat of battle that they've been in. These guys are in flight, are they not? They're in flight for their life when they're finally caught. So I don't think it happened during the battle. I think it was sometime previously when these two kings came up into Palestine, took these men and just slaughtered them. Okay? In some kind of a wicked and cruel manner. And so now Gideon asks, what manner of men were these? Notice point 2 there, what manner of men were they? Gideon asked the king to assess the men they had killed. What type of men were they? What is he asking? What type of character do they have? Okay? When you saw them and they stood before you put them to death, how did they manifest themselves? How did they display themselves to you? Tell me about those men. I put a little illustration in here. Anybody seen the movie The Patriot? Okay, I like that movie. Okay, when it's on, Kathleen goes, "Oh, you watching that again?" That's what I say to her when she's watching Sweet Home Alabama. There's a colonel in that movie by the name of Tavington. Okay, he's the evil colonel from over in Britain. Okay, and there's a scene when he shoots a young boy and shoots him in the back and kills him, okay? This is Mel Gibbs' son, okay? And Mel Gibbs is playing Benjamin Martin in the movie, okay? Well, later on, Benjamin Martin meets Tavington, doesn't he? And they are in a conversation. And that Tavington looks at Mel Gibson, he says, "Did the little boy die?" And then he says, "Stupid boy." What did he just do? He just assessed the character of that little boy, didn't he? Okay? He was a stupid boy who died. He's a stupid boy that I shot in the back. He's a stupid boy to try to do what he did on that particular occasion. You see, he assessed his character. And so now Gideon gives these men, these two kings, the opportunity to assess the character of those men that they had killed. Notice the salute given by the two kings. And they answered, "As thou art, so were they." Each one resembled what? Children of a king. Now remember, they put them to what? they'd put them to death. They'd slain them. They'd killed them. Innocent men they'd killed. But notice the assessment they give of the men, right? They don't put them down. They're not stupid boys, are they? Oh no. Gideon, they were like you are. Stroking the ego of who? Stroking the ego of Gideon. What kind of man was Gideon? The Bible says a mighty man of valor, was he not? Okay, so those guys resemble you, Gideon. They walk like you do. They're men of faith, men of power, men of authority, men of courage, men of great knowledge. They were much like you, Gideon. Boy, make you feel good, wouldn't it? And then they also describe them as resembling what? The children of a king. Okay, so you know, that's a pretty lofty description, is it not? I just wrote down a few things relative to what I would think about children of a king. They carried themselves with honor and dignity. Okay? They were strong and powerful. They manifested courage and no fear. They were articulate in their speech. They were men who were handsome to look upon. Children of what? Children of the king. So he gives us a pretty good description of them, doesn't he? The sentence given by Gideon, their relationship to Gideon first, and he said, they were my brethren. Now listen to this. Even the sons of my who? My mother. Folks, did men marry more than one wife way back yonder? Oh, yes. Okay. They had more. Even Gideon had more than one, didn't he? Had to. He had 70 sons. Okay, poor woman couldn't give birth to 70 kids, you know. So he had more than one wife. So having more than one wife was common. But now notice how Gideon describes it. He doesn't say they are sons of my father. He says they are sons of my what? They are sons of my mother. And he could have easily said, and my who? And my father. Folks, these men that were put to death were full blood kin to Gideon. Okay? They were full-blooded brothers of Gideon that had been put to death by Zebah and Zalmunna. Wow. Just think about that. How long had Gideon been harboring that? You know? You know, there's some times when evil nations take over and they do things to people, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, is there? Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian, they were the ones who were oppressing Israel for those 7 years. Folks, they went in there and they did whatever they wanted to do to individuals. And it personally affected Gideon's family. His own brothers had been cruelly, harshly put to death by these two kings. And now, these two kings are what? Standing right in front of him. Here's my question, and the text doesn't say. Did they know who those men were that they put to death? See? Did they know they were the brothers of Gideon? Or did they not know? Oh no. Text doesn't say. But it is interesting, is it not, that when he questions them about what manner of men were they, the very first thing they say is what? They're just like you, Gideon. Uh-oh. Did they just give themselves away? Possibly. They may have... Those men may have known... The minute he mentioned men at Mount Tabor, they may have immediately known, uh-oh, this ain't good. You know what? They know that Gideon has the power of life and death over them, don't they? And so, rather than demeaning those men, they immediately lift them up in his eyes, don't they? They were great men. They were wonderful men. They resembled children of a king, just like you, Gideon. You see, it may have been they knew exactly who they're dealing with. What are they fighting for? For they're fighting for their lives, aren't they? They are fighting for their lives. But notice verse 19b, the reprieve that was not given. As the Lord liveth, if ye had saved them alive, what? I would have saved you. You see, he had the power to save their life, didn't he? Folks, Gideon did not have to put these men to death. And he told them that, didn't he? If you had saved those men who are my brothers, I would be saving you today. But you didn't do that. Wow. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Notice he says, as the Lord liveth, if ye had saved them alive, I would not slay you. What does he mean by that? As the Lord liveth. But what is that little word? As the Lord liveth. Well, why did he say that? Does the Lord really live? Yeah. What he's saying is, just as surely as God lives, here's the way I would have behaved if you would have saved them alive. Okay, there would have been no doubt. If you'd have spared those men at Tabor, I would not be killing you today. And that is just as sure as the Lord is living. Okay? So, he told them, well, they knew, we done what? Yeah, we done messed up bad. Bad. I've got a question down there for you. Okay? If Gideon could have spared their lives, why didn't he? Just think about that. Yep, if you look on my answer down there, I brought, is this a form of revenge? And the answer is this. Under the old covenants, magistrates had the ability to impose punishment that was equal to the what? Equal to the crime. In fact, when you go and you look up those verses, those three talk about this very thing. When a judge made a decision, guess what he could do? Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Okay? And there was absolutely, in fact, it was the authorization of the law, folks. Okay? Back then, you did not have to do what? Give mercy if you didn't want to. Now, if a judge desired to, guess what? He could have. Just like Gideon says, if you would have spared them and shown some mercy, then guess what I would have done? I would have done the same thing. I'd have spared you and shown you mercy. If they just captured those boys, right? Guess what Gideon might have done? He might have just sent those kings back in release of his brothers, mightn't he? If you'll give me my brothers back, then I'll let you go and I'll let you live. Okay? But you see, that's not the way people think in times of battle, is it? It's not the way people think who are in positions of power and authority, right? I'm in authority, I'm in power, and guess what? I'll do whatever I want to do. What we forget sometimes is that little phrase that says something like this, what goes around comes around. Okay? And guess what, folks? This thing has done come full circle, has it not? I just find it interesting that it was Gideon who was chosen to lead the Midianites, and it was Gideon's brother who were killed by these two kings, and now these two kings are standing in front of Gideon. That, folks, that's the providence of God at work, is it not? That is the providence of God. When he told them that if they had saved them alive, I would not slay you, here's what he was really telling them. Since you did not save them alive, I will slay you. That's just the other side of the coin. He just said it nicely. Okay? So these two men know what? We're about to die. It's just, how's it going to be done? That leads to the second point, the refusal by Jether. Judges 8, verse 20. The summons to Jether. And he said unto Jether, his firstborn, up and slay them. Wow. His firstborn. Who's firstborn? Gideon's. Folks, this is the first time that we read about any of Gideon's sons being on the battlefield. Now remember, he had 70, didn't he? And now we know his firstborn at least was there, wasn't he? On the field of battle, returning back from the field of battle. We know that Gideon had 70 sons. Folks, this name Jether, very common Jewish name. In fact, we read about 6 Jethers in the pages of the New Testament, and I bet we don't know any of them except this one right now, do we? Could you tell me the story about another Jether? See, you got a 6-point lesson if you ever want it. I'm going to talk to you today about the 6 Jethers. Okay? The meaning of the word means abundance. Abundance. Okay? As the commanding officer, guess what he does? He commands his son to do something, doesn't he? Up! Slay them! Man. It's kind of nasty, isn't it? Notice point 5, having a child slay the kings would have added to the disgrace of these 2 men. Okay? It's not the commanding general who slew us. It was who? His firstborn kid slew him. It just added to the disgrace. Okay? So he commands Jether to do it. But notice, Jether was fearful, was he not? But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. Wow. Yet a youth. He feared. What do you think he feared? I mean, there's nothing these men are going to do. He's going to kill them, right? They're unarmed. His dad is standing right there, giving him the order to do it, right? So it's not like it's an unlawful act, is it? It's an act of war against the enemy. So what was he scared of, Mike? Maybe, but it was God who said what? Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. This is war, isn't it? Okay? This is just the execution of the enemy. His conscience. Okay? Notice it says he feared, for he was a what? He was a youth. Guys, this may have been the very first human life that he had ever taken. Okay? May have been the first battle he had ever been in. Okay? Is life precious? It ought to be. And can you imagine standing there and somebody telling you, okay, kill them. And you've got to you've got to literally take your sword and just whack them to death. Folks, we're talking about being stabbed, we're talking about being cut, we're talking about blood, we're talking about it is a nasty situation, is it not? And when a young man thinks about taking physical life, that's fearful, isn't it? It would be for me. I'm trained concealed carry. Okay? I don't carry very often. And I would hate to be put in a situation where I ever thought I'd have to kill anybody. You know what? Even if they were attacking me, even if they were attacking my family, to think that you have to kill somebody, folks, that to me is just an awful thought. So here you've got this young man, and it may have been that he was just fearful of taking a life as a young man. If he's really young, then he hasn't been in battle. What happens when you go out to battle and you go into one battle and another battle and another battle? What do you become? Yeah, you get battle hard, don't you? And you get a little bit of callousness about you, and it's a whole lot easier to do what you need to do than it is when you're first out there in the field doing it. Okay? What's the name of that movie about that sniper guy? One that got his American Sniper. Yeah, what was his name? Kyle. what is it? Chris Kyle. Y'all have seen that movie? He's up there on a roof and he takes the life of somebody, and his buddy's right beside him, and his buddy just congratulates him. Oh, you got, and he just looks at him. He says, "Look, man, leave me alone. Don't start rejoicing." He was shaking inside because he had to do what? He had to take a life. Okay, and he knew life is precious, and he did it through warfare, but it wasn't something that he enjoyed doing by any means. So we can have some compassion on this young guy. And, these two men were not just soldiers, were they? These were what? These are kings. I'm just a little guy. And you want me to kill the two kings of Midian? Folks, that's a pretty tall order, isn't it? A pretty tall order. That little word youth is defined as boy, lad, youth. It involves someone anywhere from infancy to adolescence. Most this young boy could have been 15, 16, 17 years old. He's just what? He's just a kid. Okay? Somebody asked, well, why did he go? Why do you think he went? Because his dad's commander, wasn't he? And his whole household was involved in this particular battle. They were one of the first ones to meet with Gideon to do the battle. So to take one of his sons and his firstborn may have felt like it was a great opportunity for him. But boy, it was tough on the kid, wasn't it? Look at number 4 there, the note. It is interesting that the youth is not ridiculed or condemned for not following through on the slaying of the kings. Okay, he just couldn't do it. Okay, he didn't even draw his sword, did he? Man. But his dad doesn't condemn him. His dad doesn't get on to him. Apparently his dad realized what? This is some pretty tough stuff that I'm asking him to do. But notice the repayment by Gideon, verse 21. The solicitation by the kings. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, rise thou and fall upon us. For as the man is, so is his what? So is his strength. Just think about that. There's Gideon, and there's the little boy, right? He's commanded the boy to do it, and when he can't, Zebah and Zalmunna immediately look at Gideon and say what? Yes, numerous examples. In fact, I think I read 4 different examples that are given in Scripture. One of them was when Saul spared Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and brought him back when he wasn't supposed to. Okay? And some time had passed since the battle, and here's this king he was brought in before Samuel and before Saul, and Agag thought that the time of bad stuff was over, right? The Bible says this, and Samuel said, as thy Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. Just get that picture in your mind, folks. He hewed him into what? Pieces. Okay? It wasn't just the chop of a sword and off with his head. Okay? Let's make a little mince meat out of Agag. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Is war nasty? Yeah, folks, war's bad. Okay? This man should have, Agag should have never been brought into the presence of Samuel, had he? He was supposed to have been killed long before that, and it was Saul who had spared him and messed up. This last part is interesting, okay? The spoils of the ornaments, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Now that lets you know what they were riding on, weren't they? Kings didn't ride mules. These kings were riding what? Camels. Okay? I've never ridden a camel. I paid for my 2 grandkids to ride camels. I didn't ride them. I wonder what that's like. Anybody ridden a camel? Nobody in here's ever ridden a camel? Yeah, I got one back here. Glenn's ridden a camel. Is it comfortable?
I don't remember it so long ago.
Oh, dude. He's not a help at all, is he? You know? Sure doesn't look comfortable, does it? Okay? Folks, before these kings and all went to war, it didn't matter whether it was a horse, it didn't matter whether it was a camel, it didn't matter whether it was a mule, it just didn't matter. They would decorate those animals with tapestry, okay, and with all kinds of jewels and ornaments, okay? And here we find that these ornaments had decorated these camels, okay? I'll give you a quote there. He set and ordered steeds to mount the band, and lofty stalls 300 coursers stand. Their shining sides with crimson covered ore. Now watch this. The sprightly steed embroidered trappings wore. With gold chains refulgent to behold. Gold were their bridles, and they chomped on what? On gold. Can you imagine gold bridles for your horses? You know? I don't go around chomping on my reins, do you? And I'm certainly not going to stick them in the mouth of a horse. Gold in the mouth of these horses. Gold around their necks. So before he leaves, after he's killed them, there's their camels. What does he do? He walks over and he takes all the gold off of those camels and takes it with him. Spoils of the what? Spoils of the battle. Notice point 2 there. Often they were the shape of the sun or moon, since these were the gods they worshipped. Okay, Gideon now had what? Prizes from battle, did he not? Hang out on the wall, couldn't you? Yep, got that moon from Zalmunna's camel, right? Where did you get that sun? Oh, that's Zeba's camel right there. Okay, spoils of battle. Notice the conclusion. Folks, Gideon was called by God to complete an enormous task, was he not? It's huge. 135,000 Midianites he fought against. It was a task that would definitely put his faith to the task, wasn't it? 135 against 300. That puts your faith to the test, right? And the initial battle, no weapons, right? I mean, no fighting weapons, just what? Pitchers and horns, right? Unbelievable. Lamps. But notice, Gideon responded with deep faith in God. His faithful obedience and courage resulted in victory over the Midianites. The Jews were now a what? A free nation, folks. That's unbelievable. If you go back and read chapter 6, just go back this evening and read chapter 6, and read the oppression that was put upon the children of Israel, and now think, okay, all that's gone, and now they're free again. Okay? And this isn't the first time. Okay? This is the 5th time that they've been delivered out of captivity by a judge. Don't you think they would learn their lesson? What was it that put them into bondage? Rebellion against God. Now you have a leader, he's faithful to God, is he not? He overthrows the enemy, he gives them their freedom back, and guess what's about to happen? Right back into sin and iniquity. In fact, 10 more times before the period of the judges is over. Unbelievable. We just can't learn, can we? Thank you, thank you. Good stuff. Yes, sir.